delighted to be with you today to share work about impact investing strategies that really have the potential to make a real difference in the world. One of the cornerstones of what we do at the Global Impact Investing Network, GIIN for short, is to advance the scale and effectiveness of impact investing. It's to provide insights from impact investors themselves, those that have practical experience in the field, and I have the privilege of being able to share some of these findings with you today. Based on our annual Impact Investor Survey, and we've been doing them for over 10 years now, I'll frame the impact investing sector, provide some insight on the market size, which Graham has alluded to already, some of the latest trends and opportunities and challenges specifically. In addition, I'm also going to share with you some of the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic and what that has meant for impact investors specifically. So let's begin. I'm going to share my screen. There we go. Hold on. Okay. This year, the GIIN conducted the 10th edition of our annual survey. The survey is the most comprehensive yet, and really looked at the size of the market and then activities of impact investors around the world, especially in a COVID context. There are 4 key findings of the survey, but specifically to tease out the challenges and opportunities, I'm going to focus on 2 specifically. Finally, I'm going to end off with some direction on where you can find more research insights from the GIIN, but as well as others, before I hand back to Graham. The GIIN has developed a market sizing methodology very specifically that has built a database collating the assets under management of over 1,700 organizations, impact investing organizations from around the world. And as a consequence, we estimate that the size of the market is about 715 billion. Based on this analysis, you will see that it's for a market that is growing and still relatively young and sits comfortably alongside analogous markets that similarly consider social and environmental impact results in their investment processes. This figure represents a significant supply of capital that has the capacity to address some of the world's most pressing problems. Furthermore, it's growing and growing in a variety of ways. And what I'm going to share with you is the ways in which that is happening by talking to you about some of the findings of the annual survey itself. There are 4 key findings, as you can see here. As I've referenced earlier, I'm going to focus on 3 and 4 specifically in order to offer insights that might be useful to all of you. Impact measurement and management, IMM for short, practices specifically that we believe have matured, but there still are opportunities for improvement. The promise of impact investing still remains very positive, despite the fact that due to COVID, there are difficult economic consequences and lots of market uncertainty. 2 factors that impact investors and investors do not like, but as we'll show you, investors still do see opportunities. Here are some of the quick characteristics from respondents to the survey, just to give you some context. 294 impact investing organizations around the world responded to our survey and told us about their investment activity up until the end of 2019. We were acutely aware of the fact that we were collecting data January to March this year at the height of the pandemic. I'll share with you a little later how we incorporated the impact of the pandemic. 67% of them seek risk-adjusted market rate returns. They are headquartered in 46 countries, and most are from organization types that focus all their activity on impact investing. The balance will use carve-outs and various other strategies to focus their work. The majority have entered the industry in the last decade. Impact measurement and management practice is a key tenet of impact investing. What we found in the research is that it has matured and deepened, but as I mentioned earlier, there are still opportunities for refinement. Before we delve a little deeper, I want to point out two challenges noted by investors and suggest that within those lie key opportunities. The first is that respondents believe that areas in which the most progress has been made are in the areas of research on market activity, which is an essential tool for investors, especially new entrants, to understand the market, where and how to best focus their efforts. And secondly, in the sophistication of impact measurement and management. We'll share a little more on this later. The second issue is this: that over the next 5 years, investors are concerned about impact washing. Indeed, this is a challenge for the integrity of the industry. One of the strongest ways to address this concern is through the rigor of impact measurement and management practices, a significant focus of the GIIN and many others' work. The annual survey's third finding uncovers this a little further, and let's see how they do so. Firstly, they intentionally target specific impact returns. Nearly every single respondent targets social impact, about 94%. About 6 in 10 investors target both social and environmental impact. What this tells us is that most investors see social and environmental targets are interrelated. When we break this down by target return philosophy, we see that over 2/3 of market rate investors target both social and environmental impact. And as you can see from the next slide, there is a growing global consensus around the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, broadly speaking, and especially within the impact investing industry. There is huge diversity in the types of impact areas that investors target. The majority target decent work, SDG 8, as well as poverty, SDG 1, whereas a smaller percentage of respondents target peace, justice, and strong institutions, just 16%. It's probably because it's quite a hard area to find deal flow specifically. In terms of investors measuring their impact results, the average investor uses at least 3 such resources being frameworks, tools, and systems to fulfill complementary purposes. Purposes being to set targets, to measure them, and then to report on their impact results. The SDGs are the most common across all purposes, whereas IRIS and IRIS Plus, being the generally accepted system for measuring and managing and optimizing impact, are mainly used to measure and report on impact. Thinking back to the very first annual Impact Investor Survey from 2010, the findings indicated that 85% of respondents to that survey used their own proprietary framework to measure impact. And now, 10 years later, we see that 89% of respondents use external resources to measure their impact. This is a significant evolution that goes a long way to addressing concerns such as impact washing. While nearly half of the respondents strongly agree that their organizations have increased its impact IMM rigor, still opportunities remain, in particular on independent verification and the ability to compare impact performance with peers. Addressing these will also help reduce any threat of impact washing. The industry is actively working on these areas. Of course, the impact performance work at the GIIN, but also other industry initiatives, such as Harvard's impact-weighted accounts and efforts like the International Finance Corporation's operating principles. As I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, we collected data from respondents for the survey as the most pervasive and widespread pandemic the world has ever seen was playing out. We went back to our respondents specifically and asked them how this was affecting them. The results were illuminating and have spurred further work that has helped to guide investors during this time. Firstly, let's contextualize investors' COVID response in terms of their financial and impact performance expectations pre-COVID. Similar to patterns that we've seen in past years, 88% of respondents indicated that they are meeting or exceeding their financial performance targets, and an impressive 99% are achieving their impact performance targets. In a COVID context, as expected, investors do see significant change in their risk profiles of their investments. 81% indicate that the overall risk has changed as a result of the pandemic, unsurprisingly, and 43% believe that the impact risk has changed. Understandably then, in the wake of COVID, investors are expecting a level of underperformance. 46% of respondents believe that their impact portfolio will underperform against financial targets, and 16% on impact targets. However, 18% believe that their portfolio will outperform against impact targets. Despite these headwinds, most respondents to the survey plan to maintain or increase their capital commitments to impact investing in these difficult times. Following on from these findings, the GIIN formed a coalition, an industry initiative accelerating impact investments to respond, to recover, and to build resilience, R3 for short, in the face of COVID-19. This coalition has developed specific research pieces to address specific challenges that investors face, like how to conduct due diligence in a distanced, uncertain context, especially as priorities for investors and investees are changing at a very fast pace. And you'll see there some of the key takeaways from that research. With that, I'm going to summarize. I hope that these findings that I've given you offer insight into how impact investors today are engaging in these strategies to realize the promise of impact investing, using capital to address the world's most pressing challenges, whether that be quality jobs, access to markets for small-scale farmers, or affordable housing, just to name a few examples. The impact investing market's strength comes from its growing size, its diversity, the depth of its growth, IMM practices, and its ability to address serious challenges at difficult times. In fact, the promise of impact investing is most relevant now in these times. It remains for me just to let you know that we have far more resources, so please do reach out if you need further information.